Thank you to No Cold War International for having me and for being in coalition with CODEPINK here in the US and the China is Not Our Enemy campaign, because we cannot do this work of mobilizing against empire and militarism without our broad internationalist coalition here. Thanks to all the speakers. I'm honored to be here with these fantastic speakers today representing Europe as well as China and offering the reasons that this war on China is not in the interests of Europeans and possibilities for peace. But I'm here to kind of ask the question of who is really leading this war on China. And I think a lot of people have mentioned it, but it is without a doubt the United States. The United States has been corralling, consolidating, shoring up, arming, nuclearizing, training, ultimately mass profiting off of forming alliances and partnerships to escalate its hybrid war on China, which includes, of course, economic and legal warfare, military brinkmanship, civil subversion, academic warfare, information warfare, including things like the United States FBI's China Initiative, false charges of espionage, where every 10 hours a case is opened against a Chinese student or researcher in the US, or the CIA's recently initiated China-focused unit, or the Congress packages of anti-China legislation to escalate war on China here. So whether implicitly or explicitly, the US often shores up these partnerships through coercion under the pretext that these nations and their people will not be safe without US weapons and US military integration, putting other nations in the crosshairs of this war. We can see this with the AUKUS alliance, with the nuclear submarine transfer, which, as has been stated, can be seen as in violation of the principles of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. As our partners at the Independent and Peaceful Australia Network released in their statement against AUKUS, this agreement cements military dependence on the US, Australia becoming unable to operate without Washington's approval, especially as the Morrison government commits to allowing further US military and troops into Australia. So this is part of a pattern of US military and government contractors embedding themselves in the military infrastructure of another nation. We saw this in Afghanistan. We saw that this was why it was so hard to leave that infrastructure and have Afghanistan's people be safe in our withdrawal. So these nations become dependent on the US military for their survival and safety. This, in terms of Australia, will deny the ability for Australia to act independently and make it complicit in dangerous regional tensions and conflict. We also see this in Taiwan in many ways. We see this month US Congress members calling for giving Biden the authority to go to war with China over Taiwan, literally taking a page out of the book from the buildup to the Iraq War, justifying intellectually and legally this intervention. We are seeing this past Sunday, the US and Canada sailed warships through the Taiwan Strait, where we know that recently it was disclosed US Special Forces and Marines have been deployed to Taiwan for at least a year. Recently, there was a $750 million arms sale approved to Taiwan, all disrupting over 40 years of peace and stability that the One China policy and 3 communiques have provided. And so from our perspective at CODEPINK, in order to stop spiraling us closer to a potential nuclear war and nuclear winter and climate extinction, the US must stop creating these irresponsible security pacts that dichotomize the world's nations into either useful allies or sensationalized enemies for more war, profiteering, and forever wars. So what is at stake for Europe, and what does Europe have to lose from this? Apart from the devastating, irreversible global impacts of a nuclear winter or climate catastrophe, let us not forget that in the first Cold War, we came narrowly close to a nuclear war. Pentagon paper whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg shared classified documents that the Pentagon seriously considered launching a first nuclear strike against China in 1958, risking a retaliatory strike by the Soviet Union on US soil, all over control of the Taiwan Strait. or the fact that the war was in fact kinetic and hot. Many in the US do not acknowledge or remember this. In Laos, Czechoslovakia, China, Korea, Vietnam, Cuba, Germany, Poland, Greece, despite what US and NATO officials claim, covert wars are still wars. And apart from the severe dangers to European citizens, European nations lose out massively regarding trade with China, multilateralism, opportunities for cooperative innovation, prosperity, and exchange. The EU and China are two of the biggest trading partners in the world. China is the second biggest trading partner to the EU behind the US, and the EU is China's biggest trading partner. Joining the US in this war is self-defeatism. The US is furious that it could be further isolated, especially from global trade, by the completion of China's ambitious Belt and Road trade initiative. So nothing really sums up that isolation and frustration than the US's inability to dominate the Asia Pacific better than the fact that the US is not a member of any of the 3 trading groups in East Asia currently. In contrast, China is the founder of the Belt and Road, 139 countries, a key member of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, 15 members, joining the CPTPP, previously the US's Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was created by Obama as part of the US pivot to Asia with the intention of excluding China from trade. That has 11 members. Trump pulled us out of that, and now China's joined. So while the US instigates mass war, devastation, destruction on the global South, China builds roads and avenues for trade, solidarity, and most importantly, mutual respect for sovereignty. The Western imperialist, capitalist, colonial, and neoliberal world is indeed threatened by China's hard-earned rise to power after a century of imperial conquest and devastation. And it has a vested interest in destabilizing this alternative non-capitalist model that China is developing for the global South and its people. The Belt Road Initiative, going through Southeast Asia, Central Asia, the Mediterranean, Europe, Africa, it realizes the heartland of Eurasia, the world island, a single economic bloc, isolating the US, accomplishing exactly what US military planners Brzezinski and Wolfowitz sought to prevent. And I want to go a little bit to the US Pentagon budget. What really has to happen is global outrage at US imperialism, militarism, and the perpetuation of these senseless forever wars. Just as Yana said earlier, there's nothing stopping the US military industrial congressional complex and the US war economy that is driven purely by greed and monstrous addictions to war. Only the weapons manufacturers win from such a huge military budget. The rest of us are losing due to our taxes being diverted to war instead of desperately needed life-affirming policies. Right now, the US Senate is proposing an increase in the Pentagon's 2022 budget by $24 billion, with a focus on countering the inflated threat of China. It's been steadily increasing this budget of the Pentagon in the US since 9/11 and the ensuing wars, which cost $8 trillion, more than 900,000 people, according to Brown's cost of war study. These wars were part of Pentagon planners Brzezinski and Wolfowitz's proposals of preemptive war against any next potential challenger through the US's pivot to Asia, which began under Obama, continued under Trump, and unfortunately has continued dangerously under Biden. So I will finish up. I just want to say that there are some wins from this peace movement, including this webinar right now, a testament to our collective power to resist imperialism and arms profiteering. Our successes of educating the public in CODEPINK on the local level, national level, and international level on this developing war on China that many are just completely unaware of in terms of like on the ground working people. And the international peace movement, the response to the AUKUS alliance, how immediate statements came out in agreement and opposition from the US, the UK, Australia, India, New Zealand, of course, Asia Pacific nations, all these peace groups, and the fruition of what we have been building before that announcement, and how it took many officials by surprise. So rather than a unipolar world order dominated by the US or a bipolar world order of opposing systems and values, the US should be leading the way in de-escalating this arms race and conflict by promoting multilateral respect and cooperation as the globe faces ongoing crises of climate catastrophe, the pandemic, nuclear proliferation, and more. There is room for more. We must make room for peace and for possibilities for a future for all people and the planet. Thank you so much.